It is 12:15. You are listening.
Agencies on the ground distributing blankets, clothing, and other essentials to thousands across the country. Sponsor a
Audio.
winter warmth pack for 280 Rand. Call Africa Muslims Agency now on 011 834 8685. Spread warmth this winter with Africa Muslims Agency.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Once again, Maulana Timol will be taking a trip abroad for Qurbani. Many people in the villages live well below the poverty line and only eat meat on the days of Eid al-Adha. Support this cause at 1,820 Rand for 7 shares or 260 Rand per share. Contact Maulana Timol, Maulana Sajjad, Maulana Hamad or Maulana Abbad on 011 852 6324 or 8584 or 8538 or 072 299 9268. All slaughtering will be supervised by a team of foreign and local ulama. Visit www.operationqurbani.org.za.
Give charity without delay, for it stands in the way of calamities. For child-headed households in Bloemendal in the Eastern Cape, the daily diet consists of white bread and a carton of cheap juice or sugar water, known locally as the poppy water diet. Make a difference to that one child or family. The Al-Fida Foundation has over the past 13 years worked on the ground and gathered the largest database in the Eastern Cape region of Muslim Zakah recipients. Phone our offices at 041 484 1288 or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al-Fida Foundation, your social investment partner in the Eastern Cape.
Love is behind all the greatest stories of our lives. And the greatest love of all is Allah's. The first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah are the days most loved by Allah. So give Qurbani in 30 countries worldwide. Give Qurbani. Give love with Islamic Relief.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
It's 12:17. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. On the 24th to the 28th of June marks Drug Awareness Week. Excessive drug use has been a major problem in South Africa even prior to COVID-19. COVID-19 appears to have further exacerbated the use of drugs such as alcohol, with most people having struggled with their mental health, leading to increased use in substances. Our panel discussion today focuses on substance abuse and the impact it has on the South African family structure. And Coach Nadia Saluji and outreach coordinator at Sanka Nishtara Nazar Lunat, who are both on the telephone. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to both of you, and shukran for joining me.
Walaikum salam and jazakallah for having me.
I'm going to start with you, Nazar. Let's talk about the of the substance abuse in South Africa. I know the numbers are very high according to other countries. So let's dissect that a bit. What is the percentage of substance abuse in South Africa, especially amongst young people?
Jazakallah, and assalamu alaikum to you, the other guests and your listeners. I think it's going to be important to start by saying that June is a month that we normally commemorate youth, or it's a youth month. We got a bonus because in June we also commemorate and highlight alcohol and drug abuse within South Africa. And on the 26th of June, it's observed as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking that was just this weekend. So maybe we can start with some latest stats. So in terms of latest World Drug Report released by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which was on the 24th of June 2021, it says that Africa will see a 40% increase in substance use and misuse by 2030. A 40% increase by 2030. So the latest stats that we have, obviously, we're sitting with two batches of stats, but one from 2017, which says South Africa's highest prevalence of fetal alcohol disorder, or FAD, in the world. In other words, our prevalence rate is 4 times higher than the global average. And then it says also that South African youth are especially vulnerable to substance experimentation and long-term use, whether it be alcohol, illicit drugs, over-the-counter and or prescription medication, etc., etc. When you are speaking about stats, so SENCA on its own also obviously does research. And so we've just received the statistical results for the year 2021 to 2022, which is from the 1st of April 2021 to the 31st of March 2022. And then the following trends are picked up. In other words, it's saying for its financial year, 13,925 clients were treated. So this is nationally, SENCA national statistics. And they're saying compared to the previous year, there was a 30% increase. So the previous year was 8,891. Obviously, the reason for that increase, amongst others, is that remember we were in a hard lockdown. And in the hard lockdown, we were restricted in terms of our movements. So if you break it down further, and now we're using the 13,925, and we are breaking it down. So we're saying from gender. From a gender perspective, 86% of those were males, and 14% were females. But it doesn't mean that males are more addicts in terms of the male gender than in terms of the female gender. All that it says that as a society, we need to take note. There seems to be hindrances or obstacles or impediments for females to be given the treatment or for females to be treated. Whether it's the fact that they are homemakers, whether the fact that they cannot leave their homes and go and seek services, etc. is a conversation that as society we need to hold. And then it goes further in terms of age groups, where it's broken down further. So we're talking of the age group 36 to 60 plus. They made up 20% of the number. And then we see our youth, which is 61%. They've made up 61% of the 30,925 clients that we've seen in the previous year. And then we have children, and they are classified from the age group of 4, not 14 or 44, after 3, 4 to 17, and they make up 19%. And then if we want to really get a more zoned in understanding of the results and of the age group that is most at risk, it's broken down further to 22 to 35-year-olds. And the 22 to 35-year-olds, we saw a 9% increase, which brings it to 45% of the clients that were treated. I mean, almost 50% of 13,925. If we round it off, make it 7,000. It's the age group 22 to 35. And the second group, which accounts for 17% of the admissions, is the age group 14 to 17, which we saw as in terms of a 5% increase. So the increase, we attributing the increase to the possibility that schools have become fully operational. However, there is a concern that the age group that we are talking about is the future of the country, which is our youth. Then we also break it down further in terms of the primary substances, in terms of a ranking. So we've seen dagga. 34% of our clients are addicted to dagga. Out of the 34%, 17% of them were under 18. Then in terms of tech or crystal meth, they account for 18%, alcohol 17%, heroin 10%, cat 6%, Mandrex 3%. So what we're seeing is that your alcohol and Mandrex, it used to be ranking on top, are now dropping for drugs like dagga and tech. And then you have your mixtures. Your mixtures is like your hungas and your nyaupes, which is not but it's a mixture of other ingredients. And that is just a 5% increase. And then for admissions, your 18 to 21-year-old contributed to 16%, the highest group. Then you've got 40 to 49-year-olds that contributed to 11%. Your 36 to 39-year-olds at 7%. Your 60 plus 8%, but here's something more interesting now. Your 4 to 13-year-old, 2%. So from this, you that the impact on your 22 to 35-year-old is the most problematic. And it has been the highest admission in the 5 years for this age group. Obviously, we spoke about COVID, the impact of COVID on addiction. COVID with a hard lockdown. I think what it has done is that it has awakened us and conscientized us to the extent of addiction, particularly with regards to alcohol and tobacco-related products within our country. And we take this from the fact that we've seen that the desperation in the consumption of alcohol, we've seen home-brewed concoctions that were now replacing your retail outlets. As a result of the consumption of those home-brewed concoctions, we've obviously registered a high number of deaths. Then we've seen the black market trade, the illegal trade of alcohol and tobacco products increase. And then we've seen something much more, or rather a new phenomenon. And the new phenomenon was that liquor outlets were getting robbed, not for money, but for alcohol. And as a result of the lockdown, obviously families were now isolated and they had to deal with this malady head on without them being able to get the necessary assistance. However, it is important to note that these figures and the instances that has been raised with specific regard to COVID, we obviously still need to do more research in terms of the full impact of COVID, in terms of addiction and related features. I think at a later point in time, we'll be able to have those stats or the outcomes of that research, and then we'll obviously be able to engage a bit further. So for now, I hope I've given the meat for us to probably engage further.
Right. Okay, shukran. I'd like to bring in Nazia into the conversation. Nazia, why are more younger people abusing substances, especially alcohol? We've heard the figures that Nazar has just mentioned right now, and 14,000 deaths that Sanka has found that's a lot. Why are more younger people starting to abuse alcohol? Especially alcohol, rather.
So those statistics are absolutely shocking, number one. Number two, it actually leads the question, because in light of the recent events, 21 young people lost their lives in a tavern just recently in East London. So when we talk about young people and the reasons why they are using or why they're turning to substances, there's a range of different reasons, contributing factors. We've got mental health issues that are absolutely taking over in young people. We're talking about depression. We're talking about, fetal alcohol syndrome, teenage pregnancy. We've got so many things that contribute to them having suicidal thoughts, attempted suicide, self-mutilation. We've got a lack of recreational institutions and facilities in our communities. Young people have absolutely turned to drinking and to smoking as their recreational activity of choice. Also, it speaks to what kind of morals and value systems are we modeling as a society, and is our educational system, remedying or addressing these issues? Are we talking about mental health? Are we talking about child-headed households and what challenges these children are facing? Are we also watching the dynamics in our schools and how these societal issues have made its way into schools, Miriam? So what we're looking at is, for example, in our communities, where transports gather to fetch children and then they do the whole swap over. If you walk through there at any given time, you will smell marijuana. You know that these drugs and alcohol, it's basically funneling and being peddled through there. It's a whole host of issues that young people need to give a voice to their issues, and they need to know that there is help out there, especially them being our future. We're looking at our future leaders not being able to have the mental capacity to study further, to retain careers, and to carry on and lead normal lives, because substance abuse leads to mental health issues. And, some of them are irreversible. It causes irreversible damage to their brain, and it leads to personality disorders. So there's a lot of marketing for drugs going out there and not enough information about the long-term effects. Or maybe the information is there, but it's not being received with the kind of seriousness it deserves. We're still awaiting news on how the 21 young people were able to sit in a tavern and what exactly happened to them to lead to their death. And there's a lot of questions, but it's also a very sad reflection of what's happening in our communities and societies today. Our young people need alternatives, functional alternatives, and one that addresses all of the needs that it would take to save them ultimately from the scourge of substance abuse.
Right. And the issue that happened with the 21 minors, I mean, this is something that could happen to anyone. It could happen to anyone from any community, from any religious background. It doesn't matter where you come from. But, it is a growing concern right now. And I'd like to know from Nazar, why is it a growing concern in our community, and why should we be concerned?
Jazakallah, Marin. I think Nadia hit the nail on the head. I think she addressed it quite eloquently. I think it's important for us to start off and say that we feel the grief of the families that have lost a loved one. It was a tragic event. However, it could have been prevented. The question that was asked by Nazia and by all of us is the age group, although we don't have a definite number on how many had come to whatever, or how many of them had passed on. It's between 20 to 22. But even if it was one, it's still an issue of concern. So the age group that had come up is that the youngest was 13 and the eldest was, or the biggest was 17. Already we have a concern, and that the concern is no one under the age of 18 is allowed to buy alcohol or to be in a premises that sells or where alcohol is consumed. So the first red flag that comes up there is that obviously the elders, which include the tavern owners, which includes other members of public, elder members of public or from the community that were there and that could have reasonably seen that, hey, these are too young to be in the taverns, and they failed to do something. It's an indictment on us. We may be in Gauteng and they may be in Eastern Cape, but like you rightly said, it could happen anyway. Who's to say it hasn't happened? Maybe not that number. Therefore, it has not probably was not newsworthy, but it is happening all over because of the fact that our law enforcement seems to be non-functional. our responsibilities and our ethics of the elders seem to also have our moral compass. Our moral compasses seem to have went offbeat. So the whole chain, including the parents ought to have known where their children were. But the parents ought to have taken more responsibility. It's easy to say that the tavern owner is to be blamed, but not on his own or not on her own. Well, we've heard that the owner and his wife has been arrested, but they on their own are not to be blamed. Our society as a whole, I think, like Nadia said, in terms of the mental health challenges. So when you have a toothache and it persists, you go to a dentist. It's not so.
Mm-hmm.
If you are feeling well and if it persists, you go see a doctor, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
But when we have mental health challenges, because of the stigma that society attaches to mental health issues, I'm not feeling well, I'm depressed, I don't have anywhere to go. Because if I decide to go and see a mental health practitioner, I'm going to be labeled as a nut, as a mad person. And as a result thereof, we are isolated, and we then experiment with other outlets in terms of self-medication. And a problem, a bad problem, just becomes a worse problem. And I echo the sentiments of Nazia that from a mental health perspective, the normal one is where they say tigers don't cry. That is for men in particular. They say tigers don't cry. And then my response to that is that I want to meet the person who stood next to the tiger when the tiger got bad news, to see that there was no tear that came down the tiger's eye.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to find that person because chances are the tiger chowed that person up. So there's this fallacy in our communities that says that men can't cry and men have to be soldiers, because our biggest challenges with GBV, with substance abuse, with addiction, all of that is men, unfortunately, because there is no other outlet. As society, we need to revamp our morals, our practices, and our ethics. We need to be inclusive. Inclusive don't only mean that we need to be inclusive in terms of race and gender, and then the gender we're speaking about is females, or what about the male?
Mm-hmm.
What about
All right.
the men? As society, we're shutting men out, and that is what is contributing to our problems, because our youngsters are not keen to listen to what we say, but they're very keen to copy what we do. And the role model in most instances for addiction is our males.
Mm-hmm. Nazar, I'm going to have to cut you off there because of time. We do have a comment here from Sakumzi Mtomben who says abuse of alcohol starts from home, society, etc. At home, elders send minors to go and buy beers. Society in our communities, when they celebrate or they make these rituals, there is involvement of alcohol. And when they are drunk, their behavior. Now, the young ones emanate all those kinds of styles and behavior. And Nazia, quickly from you, any final thoughts before we leave?
Yes, definitely. Thank you to Nazir for highlighting, because those are the kind of contributing factors that we talk about when we talk about a conscious society taking responsibility for how it takes a village to raise a child, and raising future leaders or future abusers or future gangsters. But let me just add that social media is a huge influence on our young people right now. The glamorizing of certain lifestyles and what it takes to run that lifestyle is also a huge influence impacting people's perception and view going forward. So our intervention and prevention approaches need to be adapting and innovating to speak the kind of languages it takes to get through to our youth. So our messages are not only impactful, but it also inculcates change and leads them to a point of reflection. We definitely need to sit up and pay attention before we destroy, or we have no young leaders, we have no future.
Mm-hmm. Right. Shukran so much to the both of you for your time and for joining me on this discussion. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan.
It is 12:39. You are listening to the mid-morning talk on Salam Media, and like our guest said, we have to sit down and have a discussion and have these conversations about substance abuse, use and abuse rather, in our communities. It's not something that we can brush under the carpet and pretend as if they do not exist. What happened in the Eastern Cape can happen to anyone. Who knows if it has not already happened? You are listening to the mid-morning talk. We will be right back.